All right, you guys, this is part two of me sitting down with Jameson from Vegas, a really good friend of mine, always been a believer of the podcast. I guess this is episode 61 and a half of the Gully Blanchard podcast. Again, the great state of Sacramento, California. We're going to pick up right where we left off. I know we had some connection issues, so we were talking a little bit about, my hometown Sacramento Kings. I know you gave me a little bit of optimism with Justin Jackson, but when you were at the game, what were some of your bigger takeaways from watching them play?
Well, the one thing I did see is that a lot of guys were active. Like Willie Cauley-Stein is active, Scal is active, big. They have energy. It just really comes down to the coaching staff. I don't know what system you guys run. That's the biggest thing. Whenever you look at a team, whether they're good, bad, whatever, you want to at least know what they're running. You want to know you want to be able to look at their team and see what the hell is going on, what kind of style, what kind of system they have. And if you can figure it out in the first 5 minutes, you're in good shape. But if it takes you like a quarter, 2 quarters, or the whole game to figure out what they're doing, then that's kind of scary. Like it's kind of scary. So I know a lot of guys were out and they were mixing matching lineups. So I don't take too much into it. But I just kind of want to see the identity of the team. And with the young guys they have, I love to see them run more. Like they need to be running up and down the court and shooting a bunch of threes and getting the fans involved. Even if they're not good, at least play entertaining brand of basketball, because there is nothing, and I mean nothing worse than a bad team that plays a boring brand of basketball. That's the worst thing to be in the NBA.
You mean like last year's version of the Sacramento Kings after they got rid of Boogie?
Pretty much, and then a lot of other versions too. But I will say this: the comeback when you guys had it versus the Clippers was one of the most hilarious things I've seen in a long time, because you just had a bunch of guys out there playing and running. Like that's the thing, when you have young guys, especially when there's no expectations, just let them run. Like just let them run and have fun. But the one thing I will say, De'Aaron Fox, he wanted to be in Sacramento. Like he wanted to be, like he took it upon himself. Like, hey, I want to be here. I think it's cool here. I don't mind being drafted here. You know what I mean? Because most guys here in Sacramento, like the year before, they had trouble bringing guys in for workouts. They had trouble bringing prospective draft first round guys in. So that that was kind of weird. And then the next year, you hear a guy in the top 5 saying he wants to come to Sacramento. That's a good thing. You want to keep that up, because the more that keeps up, then you could actually build something. But we'll see what happens. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the front office, but I did like the draft day trade, so that was good. Getting 3 picks out of one was always good. It just really comes down to how guys shake out, and if Giles can, if he can give you anything, in a couple of years, you're gonna be really good.
Yeah, that was one thing. I was at the game, their first preseason game, and I'll give the city credit. And I've had my issues with the complacency of Kings fans and kind of the accepting of being mediocre that I've had to suffer through for a little bit of time. But they're really going all in on I call them the young Kings. It's funny because we have such a difference in our starting 5 as far as the age and the experience with the Vinces, the Hills, and Zebos. I was telling a friend of mine, like, if they really wanted to keep the city active, it would be really funny for me to like see the older vets, like the Zebos and all those guys, like try to learn about this kind of stuff that the young kids like. Like, I would love to have De'Aaron Fox and Vince just sit down and talk about music, and you'd see like such the gap between, like, let's call it what it is. Vince is not a spring chicken, but just to hear him and De'Aaron Fox like talk about music and style of dress, like that'd be a great way to kind of get the city energized. And it's going to be tough because Sacramento's never really been a city that traditionally attracts free agents really well. Depending on who you ask, that was either the front office's fault or Boogie's fault. I'm gonna put my sort of the blame on the front office because I'm unapologetically a Boogie and Rondo stan. I think you know me well enough to know that I will give those guys the benefit of the doubt on just about anything. But
I'm a big Boogie fan as well. I think he got a lot of blame for a shit show that was going on that he really had no control over. So I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, he's at fault for some stuff. I'm not gonna put him off the hook completely, but I think a lot of the stuff was more like firing Mike Malone. Even though I don't think he's a great coach, firing Mike Malone when they did was very, very bad. And they were replacing him with the guy they replaced him with. I mean, George Karl is awful. Like, I mean, he's won a lot of games, but I mean, that's not the dude you wanted to bring in at that point with that team. That just wasn't a good idea at all. So the front office has been a problem for a while, and that's been the biggest issue. Like that, to me, has been the biggest issue there. But we'll see. I know there's been a couple of hires made recently that have been pretty good, pretty solid, but we'll see what takes place. But yeah, I think the Kings will be okay down the line. I think they have some young guys they can do some stuff with. My biggest thing is this. Are they a team that can tank this year and get a top 3 or 4 pick? Because if they can get another guy, if they can mess around and get a Michael Porter or DeAndre Ayton or a Marvin Bagley, they got action, because now you got a young stud to go with the rest of the young guys, and then you're talking about in a couple years, guys going to be all right. So we'll see what happens. We'll definitely see what takes place. I'm kind of a big fan of, realizing where you're at and not rushing anything and not making any dumb decisions, and we'll see how that goes. But, we'll see. For right now, though, I think we're in a situation to where we're just in a wait-and-see mode, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. But for right now, lower expectations. I would not want to put any high expectations on anyone right now, because at the end of the day, it's still a situation where it's a young team and you're in the West. And the West is very, very rough to deal with right now.
That was my biggest fear with them this year, too, is you've got such a young team. And I didn't realize this till about 5 minutes ago. Do you remember Marcus Williams from UConn? He is now on the Sacramento Kings.
I saw him on the bench. I saw him on the end of the bench. I thought that was him. I saw it. It looked like him, and I was like, "Is that him?" And it was. And I was kind of shocked. And he's a guy that I don't think he makes the roster, but he's an interesting guy to have or follow, because he's had an interesting hoop experience. He's hooped overseas and was a first round pick, and things didn't quite shake out for various reasons. So he's definitely gonna be an interesting guy. But yeah, it's definitely interesting, this kind of team they have. My thing is this. I like what they did, bringing in a bunch of veterans. I get why they did it. I understand it. My thing is this. My whole thing with that whole situation is that you don't want to use a lot of cap space on guys you can't move. So George Hill's a guy, he's an okay point guard, but if push comes to shove, you're going to have a hard time moving him if need be.
Yeah.
And that's my concern. That's my biggest concern. If it comes down to it and you got to move him, it's going to get very tricky.
Yeah, and that was something, along with the Hill deal, that was something I was concerned about with them, moving forward. Because I said before on part one of this, that they've got 7.5 rookies. Their rookies are guys that have been in the league for 2 years. The hard part for me is, how do you end up turning Sacramento? How do you change sort of this perception that Sacramento is it's not necessarily to put it nicely, a destination franchise. Right. So I'm interested to see, with the thing that frustrated me the most about the Boogie, one of the things that frustrated me is that not necessarily the trade itself, because I understood that was a marriage that just needed, you kind of just needed to go 2 separate ways. I wasn't a fan of what they got back for him. I've said this multiple times. The hard part for me is, if you're going to get these free agents that end up blossoming, for example, every year there seems to be a free agent class where there's a younger guy or so that you can get, you can give the good, for example, the Otto Porter thing that I'm glad they stayed away from.
Mm-hmm.
But how are they going to continually get around to getting these free agents that are coming from other teams, getting them on the cheap? You might have to overspend, but we got to find a way to make Sacramento a city to where people want to come play in. And that was something that I think that they still need to do. They need a lot of work to do that.
Right.
So and I do know you're a Lakers fan.
It's like Memphis. Memphis is a city to where it's not a free agent destination. You're gonna have to overpay. But here's the thing: if you draft well, you have smart signings, like small signings. You get guys out of Europe and get guys out of different countries. You'll be okay. But Absolutely. When you don't do that, and you rely on overspending, for instance, Memphis gave Chandler Parsons way too much money.
Yes, they did.
And now they're stuck as a team. They can't go forward as a team because they made that deal.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. They're stuck. So when you're a small city, you have to be very smart with your signings, because you make a bad signing, let alone your on-court product's going to suck, but shit, you might not be profitable. I mean, that's another thing you don't realize. They're paying a lot of money out, and if they become a luxury tax team, man, you're paying a lot of money out to be a 7 seed out west, or a team that may not make the playoffs this year. So that's the thing. When you're a small market team, I think you have to make smart decisions and make rational decisions. And a lot of these smart markets don't do that. But if Sacramento's doing it right, a lot of young guys with some upside. Basically, you have like 6 or 7 young guys. You hope 3 or 4 pan out, and whoever doesn't, they don't. You keep on doing it until something sticks.
Absolutely. So going a little bit down the freeway to your Los Angeles Lakers, I heard they got a point guard from UCLA. I haven't heard much about this guy. Kept kind of a low profile during the offseason when he got drafted. Nothing big. You know, he didn't really make any waves or any headlines. But what are your thoughts about your Lakers coming up this year?
Well, Lonzo Ball's an interesting guy because he himself is a quiet guy. Like, Lonzo's a very quiet guy. He's not the guy that really wants to be in the spotlight. I remember after the game, saw him in the locker room yesterday, before media was allowed to come in, he was already kind of going away from things. So he's not that guy. You know, he's more of just a basketball-only guy, which is cool. His dad is the guy that seeks out the limelight and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, to his credit, it's worked out. Like, everything, you know, LeVar has done has worked out. I know the biggest thing people are talking about is, you know, him taking out his youngest son out of high school and making him a homeschool kid and working on his basketball game, which is going to be interesting to see. And there's a lot of pros and cons that way. Personally, I think more kids should kind of do that because a lot of kids need to really work on their game. And instead of being in school from 7 to 3 or from 8 to 3 or whatever, you can do homeschooling for a couple hours and practice on basketball. Now, I understand basketball is the end-all be-all, and I know a lot of people don't make it. I understand that. But there's a handful of kids every year, probably about 10 or 20 kids every year that are going to be in the NBA. And there's a handful of guys that could benefit from being homeschooled and putting more emphasis on basketball than they do schoolwork. And like Zion Williamson is a perfect example. I think if he went to a homeschool situation where he can work out 5 hours a day on his skill work, he'd be an incredible player. But now he's a 6'5" and a half, 6'6", 270-pound kid with extreme athleticism. But what happens when, you know, that doesn't work? Then what? Then you're kind of stuck. So we'll see what happens. But the Lakers are going to be the Lakers. They're going to be a team that's going to be competitive. Brook Lopez is actually a pretty good player. Not big on KCP that much, but I understand why they made that move. We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I'm not really, going to say anything crazy. Like, oh, they're about to win 45 games. Like, nah. They're going to win anywhere between 28 and 34 games. They'll be competitive in another 10 that can go either way. And there's a young team. That's just what it is.
I just learned this right now as I'm watching the Kings game. Zach Collins from Portland's from North Las Vegas?
He's from Vegas, went to Gorman. He went to Gorman with Chuck O'Bannon Jr., Steven Zimmerman, who's on the Lakers technically for right now. He's pretty solid. He has a lot of skills. His body isn't ready, and I don't know if he's ready, but he has a lot of skills that are favorable for the NBA game. So we'll see how he matures and how his body reacts. But, Zach Collins, one of the better players from this city in a long time.
Oh, North Las Vegas, too. That's all right.
But I will say this, though. There's a kid named Troy Brown that's going to Oregon this year. He's a true senior or a true freshman with his true age. He ain't 19 and a half like some of these old freshmen out there. You know, he ain't no double holdback. He's true to his age. He's from Vegas. He's going to Oregon. He's going to be a stud. He's going to be a really good player.
All right, sounds good. So I'm gonna get you out of here on this one thing. Obviously, we know there's been a ton of moves in free agency that have been covered and overcovered. I'm gonna just put you on the spot. Can any team stop or get in the way of Golden State? Like, is there anything you see that it's going to be a bumpy road for Golden State, or is it just pretty much the Warriors in 2?
Well, define the bumpy road, because the last team that really gave them a bumpy road out west was OKC with 2 top 5 type players. I don't see anyone that has 2 top 5 players on their roster right now. Paul George is very good, but he's not a top 5 player. I don't see, Chris Paul's still a good player. But he's not a top 5 guy anymore. I don't know if he ever was. That's up for debate. But it's just tough, man, because here's the issue now. Not only are they really good, is that they're extremely deep. So let's say if Clay were to turn an ankle or something crazy like that would happen, they have like Nick Young, Omar Caspi that can give you 70% of what Clay got you. And they have Iguodala there still. They have Patrick McCall there that can play. So they have a lot of guys that can like fill in. They don't have to play their guys big minutes. They can really rest. And in the playoffs, in the finals, the big thing with them is they can stick to their normal schedule of rest, where other teams have to max out guys and play guys 45 minutes and 47 minutes. Like, no, like Steph would come out 2 minutes before the first quarter and come back middle of the second quarter. Same thing with Clay. You know, they'd stagger each other's minutes, and they'd be fresh come fourth quarter. I think that's a big part of what they do and why they're so good is because they're not taxing their bodies so much. And that's something that doesn't happen that often because most teams don't have that luxury. Most teams got to play their guys. But when you have a roster that's 8, 9, 10 deep at all times, and I didn't mention Livingston, who's a really good player for them as well. Yeah, they're able to do a lot of things other teams can't, and that's just kind of how it goes.
How much of that, them being able to rest their guys, is part of their depth and is part of them, how fast they can get up on teams by 15, 17, 20 to where teams sort of have to abandon a game plan to try to score with the Warriors, which allows them to sort of rest, you know, the big four, the Draymond, the Durant, the Clay, and Steph. How much of that has to do with the fact that they can just score in bunches really quick before other teams can really compensate or catch up to that?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because here's the crazy part about that whole situation you just mentioned. There was a game last year they played Sacramento and Oracle. And it was, I think Sacramento may have been winning the game at half.
I remember this.
They were even up. And then next thing you know, the Warriors were like a 40-something point third quarter and lost your road.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's not that they can get up on you quickly. It's how they do it. It's demoralizing because they'll get a stop. They'll get a steal or a block, and they're running. And next thing you know, they hit 2 threes within 30 seconds. And then now, next thing you know, it's a 12-0 run in a minute 15, and all hell breaks loose. So that's just kind of what it is. And it's just tough to beat. You know, it's really, really tough to beat, man. It's a tough situation to where if I'm playing the Warriors, you kind of have to know a run is coming. You just have to hope you can sustain it, and you got to call as many timeouts as possible because when they get going, it's damn near impossible because they can put up 45 on you in any given quarter, any given time, any given gym. They can do it on the home, on the road, neutral site. Hell, Steph had 40 points in 3 quarters the other day in China. So, I mean, they're just really tough to beat. And I don't see anyone making a dent in them unless something were to happen to where someone were to get hurt. Other than that, I just don't see it. Or a crazy trade like if Anthony Davis goes to the Cavs and the Celtics and Celtics get another guy on top of that. Like, other than that, I just don't see it. It's just too difficult. They have so many ways they can beat you. They have so many different mismatches. And Draymond, he doesn't get the credit he deserves. I know a lot of people on Twitter think he's just a role player or he's just another guy or he's not that good. But no, the guy's really, really good. He does a lot of things for them that makes their system go. Of course, he's not as skilled as Durant or Steph or even Clay for that point. But the things he's really skilled at, it makes them really unique and tough to beat any given night. And then it's very difficult to double anybody because you have 3 of the best 7 to 10 shooters we've ever seen, period. Like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant are 3 of the best 10 shooters we've ever seen in our lives. So who you gonna double? You can't. You gotta pick your poison.
And that was something that, you know, I compare that to sort of the last big super team, so to speak. And, you know, out in Miami, one thing that makes it really exciting to actually see this Warriors team was, if you remember back when the Big Three started in Miami, like it took them a year to kind of find how they wanted to do this together. And I think, you know, and Golden State was able to put a championship together the first year. So even them, you know, with another year of experience with kind of learning how to integrate Durant and things of that nature, it makes them just you know, there's that, and also the fact that they are a very good defensive team that active with their hands. All of them get in, you know, they get in your way. And not only that, when you're down 15 in a minute and a half, like they understand how to play well with each other, and they're a very good defensive team that I don't think people give them the credit for. Because obviously offense is going to be what gets us talking on Twitter and what spikes ratings. But that's a solid team in Oakland. That I enjoy watching them, even though I'm a Kings fan. But even with all the moves that happen, like I still just don't feel comfortable with any team. Like offensively, yeah, maybe OKC can score with them, maybe Houston can score with them, but you still got to be able to stop them. You know, like Golden State can still stop you with that defense that they play at such a level. And I thought that was evident in the finals with, you know, LeBron and Kyrie were taxing themselves out, and, you know, Golden State just had more runs and they had more runs. And you still have to be able to stop Golden State and then, you know, beat that defense too, which I think is a lot more difficult than people like to talk about.
Right, and that's the thing. When it comes down to it, the defense starts everything, and they're the best defensive team in the league. I don't know what the numbers are, but I know they're the best defensive team in the league, and that's just how it goes. Until their defense falls off, they would fall off. But until that happens, get used to seeing them winning championships because they're not going to stop. And they have a system to where they can switch everything. They're very athletic. They have a lot of smart players, even though they don't play smart all the time. They have a lot of smart players, so it's interesting to watch. But teams like Minnesota and OKC and Houston and San Antonio, they have a little bit of action. But at the end of the day, it's just too much.
Absolutely, man. So I know you do a lot of stuff with the NBA during the season. Where can people check your work out on Twitter? Where can they kind of follow what you're doing if they want to hear more sort of insight from you when it comes to basketball and other things?
Man, everywhere, man. BelieveTheHypeNBA.com is where you'll find a lot of work at. I had an interview with Kyle Kuzma, MVP of the summer, MVP of the summer league and whatnot. So a lot of people have been loving him. A lot of Laker fans have been loving him and whatnot. So it's been really cool. And then KOAL 750 with my guy Jordan Utah, man, really good dude. He's put me on a lot of good situations. So got to give him a lot of credit. Also, let's see here. ESPN 1480 Nebraska. Definitely there. Where else? Fox Sports in New Mexico. Also out here, Fox Sports 13. Is it 1380? 1340 out here in New Mexico as well. So yeah, man, everywhere. It's NBA season's coming back. Happy it's here. I can't wait to get involved. I can't wait to come back on the show because it's always fun coming on, man. You like family, so whenever you need anything, let me know.
Absolutely, man. And next time you come up to Sacramento, I'm gonna take you down to the Diet Oakland district where we can get some tacos and some cool plates.
Man, I ain't paying $5 for no damn tacos. I'm saying right now. That's just on principle. I can't do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, not for one taco, but we may be able to find a spot where you can pay $5 and get a bunch of good tacos.
Yeah, I could do that, but I ain't paying $5 for one taco. I ain't. Nah, certain things as principality.
Absolutely.
Just
I agree. I've stayed away from those overpriced taco joints for quite some time, just because I have my own issues with them pretty much throwing siracha sauce all over downtown Sacramento. And I love my city, man, but I was down there last Monday, and it just I keep telling myself I know it's not for me, so I can't really get too mad. And I know it's it's a different time, it's a different generation that likes that kind of stuff, so more power to them. But all those pop-up shops and taco spots and breweries and craft this and all that, man, I'll stick with my chicken tenders and fries.
Though.
Yeah,
it's not just downtown Sac, it's downtown Vegas. It's that's what's in right now. Like being a bar hopper and going to different breweries is what's in. And I'm not. I mean, tacos. First of all, tacos has been in forever. If you're from the West Coast, tacos has been in forever. That's not trendy.
Forever.
That's just what it is. But this whole brewery thing and beer sampling, it's a little bit too much for my liking. But to each his own.
Man, you give me a double shot of Jack Daniels on the rocks with a Coke back, and I'll be just fine sitting on my end of the bar.
Yeah, I don't need the extras, man. I'm a really simple person.
Absolutely, man. So this is going to be episode 61 and a half. It'll be available on iTunes at gullyblanchard.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLYBLANCHARD. The three of us, myself, Ricky, and Marcus, will be back this week to kind of give you guys some new things. A lot of stuff happened in football, man, that we didn't even get to. I know we're going to get to that this week, but I know I wanted to make this very basketball and very Vegas centric. Those are two things that are very important to me, and I know we talk about that a lot, here and on social media and through text. So, man, thank you so much for making the time. Part 1 and Part 2 will be available on iTunes relatively soon, man. And anytime you come to Sacramento, man, we're gonna find a way to link up and hang out and have a good time.
Definitely appreciate it as always.
Man, thank you very much. And until next week, we'll see you guys then. Have fun.